appropriately considered the second best Batman villain of all time. The character is just incredibly compelling because he was a truly good man who is torn down by his own world and becomes divided. What I also find interesting is that the origin of Two-Face in modern Batman history has been tweaked in different mediums and they work very well for each. Let's not count Batman Forever, okay? Since I'm about to do a review on it, I'll only briefly talk about the other two strong interpretations of the origin that come to mind. In The Long Halloween, Harvey Dent becomes corrupted out of being overwhelmed by the organized crime in Gotham due to the Falcone family and wanting to have a more peaceful living with his wife Gilda. In The Dark Knight, Harvey becomes corrupted trying to bring down organized crime because of the Joker and him trying to prove that anyone can be brought down into savageness. The way Harvey is portrayed in these two versions is very similar because The Dark Knight took inspiration from various comics, especially The Long Halloween. In Batman the Animated Series, a major distinguishing feature is the way Harvey is before his face becomes scarred. Much more emphasis is put on the fact that Harvey has a split personality, while in The Long Halloween and The Dark Knight, it's more like a subtle darkness that sometimes will just come out, making him unpredictable. An example from The Long Halloween would be when Harvey comes home after visiting his father, and he's just in his basement flipping the coin. In The Dark Knight, it would be when he's interrogating one of the Joker's accomplices, and you can see even though he won't kill the accomplice, he does pretend to use the coin as Two-Face would, which is to decide someone's fate. In Batman the Animated Series, Harvey knows that he has an alternate personality, which he keeps suppressed, but as more and more pressure is put on him for his re-election campaign and bringing down Rupert Thorne, he starts to lose control to his other personality whenever he gets angry. What makes all these versions so tragic is that Harvey Dent is very likable and does genuinely want to make Gotham City a better place by working with the law. Perhaps more drama would have been added if we had seen Harvey in more appearances before this episode, besides in Pretty Poison and On Leather Wings, but the tragedy is still quite impactful because almost the entire first part follows Harvey Dent. The viewer is with Harvey for 20 minutes as he is losing control of himself. This is the last time I will bring up the other two versions of the origin, but what really impresses me about this, it's that it's actually quite intense for a show that's part of children's programming compared to a comic and a movie primarily aimed at teenagers and up. When Harvey loses control, it's very gut-wrenching, especially because he is under pressure to maintain his public image for re-election. The first time we see Harvey lose control is after a successful raid against Thorne's men, and one of them kicks mud on Harvey, which is then added on in a scene soon after, where Harvey is informed that the judge set the criminals free, most likely because he was bought off by Thorne, making the months of planning Harvey had done a waste. The scene where Harvey is having a session with his psychiatrist is very intense, because this is the first time we see how fully evil the Two-Face persona is, and that it is even capable of murder. This is also where we get introduced to the idea that the Two-Face persona views Harvey Dent as weak, which takes much more focus in one of the last Two-Face episodes we'll cover, which is Second Chance, if we're not counting the New Adventures portion of the series. Another tragic component of Harvey's transformation is that in the scene before Harvey gets a phone call from Thorne saying that he has Harvey's psychological profile, Harvey seems to have made such progress in dealing with his other personality, and is incredibly close to turning his life around. Even Bruce commented that he was noticeably doing better, and another layer of tragedy is added when Harvey says he is planning on announcing the date he would marry his fiancée, Grace. So let's touch on Rupert Thorne, who appears for the first time in this series, if my memory serves, according to the production order. The way he just coldly ruins Harvey Dent and his life, using his personal information, makes Thorne come off as someone Harvey Dent would genuinely hate once he's transformed into Two-Face. Thorne is a character I honestly never get all that excited for whenever he shows up. That's just because there's not much more to him than the fact he's the top mob boss, which is his purpose in the series, so I'm not going to say he's a bad character, but I don't really find him interesting. I actually find his assistant Candace more interesting because of the way she subtly pulls at people's strings because of the fact she just likes being bad. Getting back to Harvey, the genesis of his alternate personality, which they called Big Bad Harv, is very fascinating because it comes from Harvey Dent being unbalanced, with trying to be a good person, and the rage that comes out of him when somebody messes with him. When Harvey was a child, he was bullied every day by another kid, until Harvey got so mad that he punched the bully, which made Harvey feel good. Harvey found out that the bully was put in the hospital and felt so guilty, though he later discovered the bully was in the hospital for something completely different. Still, this led him to repress all his dark impulses and anger until it eventually manifested in a dark and angry second personality. When Harvey is mocked by Thorn and his gang, he completely loses control and the Big Bad Harv persona completely takes hold. I think this is rather important to the creation of Two-Face because Big Bad Harv is the way he is right before half of him is scarred. Perhaps had he been regular Harvey Dent when he was scarred, there would have been a greater chance of Harvey recovering psychologically from the accident. By the way, the creators of the series didn't hold back on the accident because we see an explosion occur directly in front of Harvey, and it even tosses him directly in the air, which adds to the overall intensity of the two-parter, and especially part 1. Batman's reaction really moves the audience and allows the audience to fully grasp the gravity of what just occurred. My single favorite scene in both parts is when Harvey looks at himself in the mirror after the doctors take off the bandages, and it cuts outside to Grace, and all we hear is an absolutely distraught cry of horror from Harvey. That single moment just completely solidifies that Harvey is now a broken man mentally. Richard Mole did an absolutely fantastic job in the role of Two-Face, where both parts of the character were played totally convincingly. I won't go into much detail talking about part 2 as I did part 1, but it does shift focus slightly so Batman has more of a direct stake in the plot. Batman blames himself for Harvey's state of mind for not acting more swiftly when he noticed Harvey was not well, and for not saving him from the explosion that scarred his face. Before watching this episode again, I wondered why with all the things Batman is able to do, why he couldn't save Harvey from the explosion. Rewatching the episode, it really was a split-second kind of accident, and Batman did react very quickly, just not quick enough to stop the man from just shooting in the air. So it really was in a way outside of Batman's control. Batman still believes that Harvey is still a part of Two-Face and can be rescued, and Alfred has a great response when he says that may make him even more dangerous. That actually turns out to be true because Two-Face is able to knock Batman out because he wasn't being level-headed enough. Now that Harvey's become Two-Face, he robs fronts for Thorn that have to do with the number 2. Two-Face, with the help of his twin gang, is able to steal incriminating files on Thorn, which he plans to give to the police, while Thorn puts a $2 million bounty on Two-Face. Man, I just said the word 2 a lot. Candace is much more involved in part 2 because she manipulates Grace into revealing for her Harvey's location. Probably the most interesting aspect of part 2 is the way Harvey is acting as flip-flopped from part 1. It shows that he truly is a man divided, and in a way incomplete, because when he was regular Harvey Dent, Big Bad Harv kept Harvey from being happy. In part 2, while Two-Face is trying to get his revenge on Thorn, the Harvey side of his personality misses Grace so much it gets in the way of Two-Face's revenge. So no matter what, he can't be fully effective no matter which path Harvey takes. Harvey's accident showed him that nothing really matters in a way, because by just some random luck, the world can be turned upside down. So he uses the coin to determine his choices because he believes chances out everything is decided in the real world, such as being good or bad, or whether a person lives or dies. One of my small complaints with this story, and it's mainly in part 2, is just how lovesick Two-Face is for Grace. I think I would have had less of a problem with this had we been able to spend a little more time with them as a couple, so we could buy how much Harvey misses her. Still, the episode does stray away from many cliches, and I really like how she argues with Two-Face's view on how the world works in an arbitrary way. The only cliche I really get from Grace is the whole Beauty and the Beast vibe I get from the two characters in the second part. By the way, I also love how Grace gives Candace her much-deserved comeuppance in the final fight. The final conflict of the story is that Two-Face has brought Grace to his hideout, which also brings Candace and Thorn because Candace disguised herself as a detective and tricked Grace into activating a tracker that led them to Harvey's location. Batman and Two-Face fight Thorn's men, and Two-Face is given the chance to flip on Thorn's fate. To keep the coin from landing on a decision, Batman throws a case of silver dollars, which Two-Face ironically stole from Thorn's hideouts at the beginning of the episode. It is a truly saddening moment when Two-Face starts yelling like a child, looking for his coin because now he's unable to make any choice at all without it. This is another aspect of Two-Face that very effectively translates into the episode Second Chance. Two-Face is taken into custody, and Gordon asks if Harvey has any hope of recovering, to which Batman responds with, "Where there's love, there's hope, Commissioner." Referring to the love Harvey Dent has for Grace, and vice versa. My problem here is Grace never shows up again in any other episode of the series. In the Pretty Poison review, I said we never see Pretty Poison Ivy's Rose ever again. I was mistaken because I think we do see it in her cell every now and then at Arkham Asylum, but she never uses it. She never uses its poison again. That's just a small nitpick of Pretty Poison, but the fact that Grace never shows up is more prominent here because of that line Batman has. Still, the episode ends with an appropriately cool image of Batman flipping a coin into a water fountain, wishing Harvey luck on the road to recovery. Before wrapping up, let's mention some production aspects. The music for this two-parter is great, and the Two-Face theme is appropriately eerie and terrifically suits the character, as the Scarecrow theme suited him. All the voice acting here is great and believable as well, but that's no surprise, because the entire series has at least good voice acting. Animation in these episodes is passable, but nothing all that spectacular, though Part 1 does seem to have more atmosphere and fluidity than Part 2. Part 1 also did a decent job in animating all the facial expressions Harvey has there. Trust me, I had to take screenshots of all of Harvey's expressions in Part 1. It was getting kind of funny after a while. I don't talk about sound design too much, but the sound effect of the coin being flipped is very ominous, and the actual coin being flipped is usually very well animated. So it makes a really intense image whenever we see it. Overall, this is a great starting point for the Two-Face character, and a compelling character study of him. I wouldn't say this is a perfect two-parter, but probably some of the better episodes of the series so far, for bringing such a level of intensity and maturity. I'm going to give Two-Face a 4.5 out of 5, it being very close to the perfect 5. I bet you guys are thinking, when the hell is he going to give a 5 if he keeps rating episodes that are so close to that? Don't worry, that 5 should actually be coming soon, and I think we all know what that is. So, thanks for watching, and please forgive the delay, and I hope you'll join me next week for a review of It's Never Too Late. When you're finished watching this review, you have my permission to die.